When I was working on my PhD, I stumbled upon a visualization of just what a trillion is. It wasn't because of money, it was because of a computer program. I was researching a problem in graph theory, and I wrote a brute force algorithm to find a graph with a certain property. And I knew I couldn't run the program to completion, but I wanted to estimate just how long it would take to run given the technology we have today. So I ran about a billionth of that program, or what I estimated to be a billionth at least, right? It's a search algorithm. When you search for something, you're kind of branching, right? It's kind of like if you wanted to figure out how to walk from here to Seattle, you might go out and try two different streets, and each of those two streets might lead to two other streets, 2 times 2 times 2, and then that's why you get an explosion in some of these search algorithms, right? And so I took one branch of that search tree, which I estimated to be about a billionth of the whole program, and I ran it just to see how long it would take. And it took about 1,000 seconds. That's about 15 minutes. And so I did 1,000 times a billion. That's a trillion seconds. And I thought, hey, that's not too bad. Seconds are very short, right? A trillion doesn't seem like that big a number, especially for computers, right? At the time, we had a $1 trillion budget deficit, right? This was 2008, my first year working on my PhD. We had a $1 trillion budget deficit, and everybody was saying trillion like it was nothing, right? We had a trade deficit with China at the time. We had budget deficits. Social Security had several $1 trillion in its so-called lockbox, right? And there's debate on whether or not that lockbox actually exists. But the word trillion just seemed like your everyday vocabulary at that point. So trillion seconds to run a computer program, yeah, I'll start running it, and maybe in a few years we'll get the result. And I plugged it into my calculator. Trillion seconds, divide that by 60 to get how many minutes, divide that by 60 again to get how many hours, divide that by 24 for how many days, and then divide that by 365 for how many years. And it turned out to be about 30,000 years. And I remember thinking the Earth is going to be in an ice age. I visualized the computer. I was actually, when I was working on my PhD, for some time I was living out of the office. I didn't have an apartment. It was a really nice office. It didn't have any windows, which I say is very nice because it's very easy to lose track of time working on your research in there without any windows. I would put a Post-it note over the clock of my computer so I wouldn't look at the clock because I didn't want to discourage myself from continuing. I used to be a workaholic. And oftentimes entire days and sometimes a day and a half would pass before I realized just how much I've been cramming away. And that's why I got to go to all these conferences. I gave a talk in Rome one time and then another talk in Boston. I really enjoyed it. Probably not worth killing myself over, but that's another story for another time. So I envisioned the computer in that office with the whole building covered with ice and snow from the ice age, and the computer still running away at the graph that we were looking for. That was going to take 30,000 years. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I got to get some kind of geothermal setup to connect it underground. Or maybe launch the computer into space, right, and then use solar energy. See, if I had uploaded my computer program to Voyager 2, it could find the result in time to tell the next star system that it passes by if there's intelligent life on there, except for the fact that Voyager 2 has really outdated technology. It doesn't have enough memory to run any of this, right? But that's $1 trillion, and that's how much we want to... the HEROES Act is projected to cost $3 trillion. To give you an idea of $1 trillion, I also visualized this at one point. I was collecting Morgan silver dollars, and I tried to envision what $1 trillion of those would look like. And unfortunately, there's only 50 billion ounces of silver ever mined, and a lot of that has been lost for good, right? But if it were to exist, right, and you put a thousand Morgan dollars on one side, and then 1,000 perpendicular to that, and make a stack 1,000,000 tall, right? It would be about the size of some of the world's tallest skyscrapers, right? The Burj Khalifa, Taipei 101, maybe the new Freedom Towers, right? And if you were to stack them, right, even if you were to stack $1 bills, it would reach about a quarter of the way to the moon, right? 60-some thousand miles. That's about how much I drive every 2 to 3 years, right? You could drive for in your 2 to 3 years of driving, you would cover the length of a trillion stacked $1 bills, right? If they were Morgan dollars that you were stacking, the stack would reach 6 times as high as the moon, right? And that's how much we're thinking about spending on the Heroes Act. Thanks for watching.